Chapter 1247 Love Letter. Chapter 1247 Love Letter. Have we met before? The heavenly phoenix divine maiden asked in slight confusion. This man looked extremely unfamiliar, yet the look in his eyes gave her a familiar feeling. In fact, it actually sent a slight ripple through her heart, which had already been unfeeling toward the opposite gender for a long time. As expected of my wife. Sure enough, she's caught on to something. Linghan smiled, and said, I'm sure we haven't. That's right, handsome brother, what's your name? There were quite a lot of young women in this brigade, and many of them winked at him meaningfully and boldly. Linghan glanced at the heavenly phoenix divine maiden before replying, Linghan. Ah. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden involuntarily let out a soft cry. Sister heavenly phoenix, what's wrong? A few women asked as they looked at the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden shook her head, and said, it's nothing. This was probably a case of two people having the same name. Her Linghan had died in the lower realm over 10,000 years ago. Ladies, I have a lot of alchemical pills on me. I guarantee they can treat all kinds of wounds and cure all kinds of illnesses. Linghan decided to win their trust, so he retrieved a large number of alchemical pills. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden was clearly going to remain in the Purple Moon Army for quite a while longer. However, the Purple Moon Army didn't really welcome men. Thus, Linghan wanted to get on good terms with these female soldiers so that they could look after the heavenly phoenix divine maiden for him. The women were all overjoyed. Alchemical pills were one of the most valuable things in the cultivation world. Although a single pill wasn't as expensive as a god tool, the fact that they were expendable items made them far more expensive in the long run. Yet, Linghan was actually handing out a large number of alchemical pills. He was being so generous that it was almost profligate. It's fine, I'm an alchemist, so this is nothing, Linghan said with a smile. The female soldiers were stunned upon hearing this. He was an alchemist. These were people who enjoyed a transcendent standing. Alchemists were also divided into 20 minor levels, each of which corresponded to a cultivation level. Moreover, if an alchemist and a cultivator were of a corresponding level, the alchemist would definitely enjoy a higher standing. This was determined by demand. The eyes of many female soldiers lit up. The cultivation world was brutal. Although cultivators seemed mighty and glorious, no one knew whether they would live to see the next day. However, alchemists enjoyed a far safer life. As long as they didn't involve themselves in disputes between cultivators, they would enjoy a transcendent standing as someone who was respected and needed by everyone. Thus, if they wanted to marry someone, alchemists would definitely be the best choice. Grandmaster Ling, what level alchemist are you? Some female soldiers asked. I just became a level 8 alchemist, Linghan replied with a smile. In order to help his wife, Linghan was truly going all out. Upon hearing this, not only were the younger soldiers charmed, but even older soldiers at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier became attracted. There was a bright glimmer in their eyes as they gazed at him, and it was almost as if they could swallow him whole. He was definitely a wealthy man. However, whether or not he was genuinely a level 8 alchemist still needed verification. After all, he had merely claimed this himself. Anyhow, Linghan only wanted them to hold him in slightly higher regard. That way, he would have an excuse to tag along with them. After all, he was only an alchemist, so his battle prowess was naturally very weak. Although the Purple Moon Army forbade men from joining, this didn't mean that the women in the army all despised men. In reality, the large majority of them were very normal. In fact, there was even a small number of them who were especially open and promiscuous. Living in this place meant that there was a risk of dying at any time. Thus, the relationships between men and women also became far more relaxed and casual. If it wasn't for the military regulations of the Purple Moon Army, perhaps they would have become a prostitute army already. With his identity as an alchemist, Linghan naturally captured the hearts of many young women. This made him realize that he had perhaps overdone it. However, for the sake of the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, he still retrieved his cauldron and refined some pills. Divine pills under level 5 could be refined in under a day, and the large majority of the Purple Moon Army was also at the Mountain River tier. Thus, Ling Han's standing with their army climbed exponentially when he refined and distributed these pills. Although some of them still refused to believe that he was a level 8 alchemist, with his young age and all, they admitted that he was at least a level 4 alchemist. However, being a level 4 alchemist was still extremely impressive. After all, Ling Han was far too young. If he was already a level 4 alchemist at such a young age, how difficult would it be for him to become a level 5, 6, or even 8 alchemist in the future? Thus, after a few days of interaction, at least 90% of the female soldiers had their hearts captured by Ling Han. If they had spare time, they would run to his tent to flirt with him. "Sister Heavenly Phoenix, help me deliver this letter to Grandmaster Ling." In a small and dense forest, a middle-aged woman tugged at the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's sleeve as she handed her a folded letter. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden couldn't help but feel astonished. This middle-aged woman was called Zhu Liyun, and she was a good friend that she had made in the Purple Moon Army. Their cultivation levels were identical, yet Zhu Liyun was far older than her. In fact, she was already over 1,800,000 years old. Thus, even taking into account the lifespan of an elite at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier, she was still a middle-aged woman. "Big Sister Yun, don't tell me you're attracted to that person," the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden said with a smile. An embarrassed smile appeared on Zhu Liyun's face, and she said, "Even you're teasing me." She stomped her foot lightly as she spoke. Seeing this middle-aged woman act like a young girl, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden couldn't but chuckle, and asked, "Why don't you deliver it yourself?" "I'm embarrassed, of course." Zhu Liyun appeared especially fidgety as she spoke. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden shook her head, and said, "That person might not actually be a level 8 alchemist." Moreover, she didn't want to say this directly. Ling Han was so young, so why would he be attracted to a middle-aged woman? There were so many young and beautiful women throwing themselves at him, so how could he settle for someone like Zhu Liyun? Not only was she old, but her appearance was also far too ordinary. "Are you worried that sister isn't beautiful enough?" A confident smile spread across Zhu Liyun's face, and she said, "Looks aren't everything. Moreover, I'm at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier, so there's a great chance that I'll advance to the Heavenly Body tier in the future. If he's smart, he'll know that marrying me is most beneficial to him." The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden couldn't help but shake her head in her mind. By the looks of it, her friend wasn't truly in love with Ling Han. Instead, she was in love with his identity of an alchemist. In the end, she nodded, and said, "Okay, I'll deliver the letter for Big Sister Yun. Remember to say some good things about me." Zhu Liyun hurriedly pulled the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden back, and said, "You're extremely beautiful, so men will definitely listen to you." The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden frowned upon hearing this, a hint of displeasure on her face. "Ah, look at me, I accidentally made my sister unhappy." Zhu Liyun hurriedly apologized, saying, "Sister said that by accident, so don't take it to heart." The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden nodded, and said, "I'll deliver the letter for you, sister." She walked to Ling Han's tent, and asked, "Is Grandmaster Ling here?" "Yes." Ling Han immediately walked out from his tent upon hearing this voice. Although he had captured the hearts of numerous middle-aged and young women, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden wasn't one of them. Moreover, she had purposefully kept her distance from him, giving him no opportunity to talk to her one-on-one. Now, his opportunity had finally come. A look of displeasure appeared on the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's face when she saw Ling Han's passionate gaze. However, she was here at the request of her friend, so she still handed the letter to him, saying, "One of my sisters asked me to deliver this letter to you. She's a shy person, so she was too embarrassed to deliver it by herself." "Love letter?" Ling Han guessed the contents of the letter after taking a glance at it. A strange look appeared on his face. "Wife, oh wife, you're actually delivering a love letter for another woman? Do you know what on earth you're doing?" Chapter 1248 Reunited. Chapter 1248 Reunited. Ling Han didn't accept the letter. Instead, he just chuckled softly. "What's so funny?" the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden asked unhappily. Are you sure you won't regret this?" Ling Han asked. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden didn't understand what he was trying to say. She waved the letter in her hand, and said, Big Sister Yoon is a good person. I hope you can cherish this opportunity. Pu. Ling Han almost spluttered aloud. Big Sister Yoon. He had listened around these few days, and he knew that the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden had a good friend called Zhu Liyun. However, she was a middle-aged woman. Auntie, is it really good for an old cow to eat fresh grass? Although absolute age was relatively unimportant to immortals, relative age between partners should still be similar, right? Ling Han couldn't help but shiver upon thinking of Zhu Liyun's slightly aging appearance. He was so traumatized that he probably couldn't eat for a year. Say, I traveled tens of millions of kilometers to look for you, yet you're pushing me into the lap of some other woman. Moreover, it's a woman who can almost be my great-grandmother. Is that really good? Ling Han asked with a smile. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's expression instantly became cautious. Sure enough, this man was having indecent thoughts about her. Someone as beautiful as her was a rare sight even in the immortal realm. Thus, it wasn't surprising that this man was interested in her. However, her heart had become like a block of frozen ice already, and it wouldn't melt for another man. Please watch yourself, she said. The most important thing is to cherish the people before you. Don't try to bite off more than you can chew. I wholeheartedly agree. One has to cherish the person before them. Ling Han gazed at the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden lovingly, and said, It's been 10,000 years, and you haven't changed a single bit. What nonsense are you speaking? The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden said coldly. Hee. Ling Han chuckled, and then used his divine sense to transmit a series of sounds. A look of disbelief instantly appeared on the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's face, and she cried in astonishment, How do you know my name? The Cloud Phoenix tribe was a bloodline descendant of the ancient True Phoenix. Moreover, the bloodline of the True Phoenix would awaken in the tribe members who possessed the purest of bloodlines. The most unique aspect of this awakening was that one would awaken their true name. This was a name that was imprinted in their bloodline, and only the owner of the bloodline would know this name. True names were of utmost significance to True Phoenixes. Once activated, their true name would increase their power explosively. Moreover, according to ancient tribe rules, there were only two options if one's true name was revealed to a second person. Marry them, or kill them. In her entire life, she had only revealed her true name to one man. However, that man should have been dead already. Who on earth are you? She yelped in astonishment. The fact that he was called Ling Han was already strange enough, yet he had actually spoken her true name as well. Stupid girl, you bullied me for so many years, yet you've forgotten me just like that. Ling Han said with a smile. Ling Han. You're really Ling Han. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's mind was numb with shock. She was in absolute disbelief. It's me, I'm back. Ling Han said with a nod. But how is this possible? The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden said in confusion. Nothing is impossible, Ling Han said. He sighed in emotion before continuing, 10,000 years ago, I went to explore an ancient site. However, I came across great danger, and ended up having my physical body destroyed. My divine sense miraculously survived, though, and I was finally given a second lease on life 10,000 years later. I opened the sky and came to the immortal realm, for no other reason than to find you. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was still lost in shock, and she said, You actually opened the sky? Back then, Ling Han could barely resist when he was bullied by her. Although she had thought of him as her husband in the depths of her heart, her personality was extremely proud. So, how could she treat him gently? However, even she had possessed no confidence in opening the sky. Ling Han had been so weak back then, so how had he suddenly become so strong now? Haha, change is the only constant, and the wheel of fortune turns. I'm no longer a fool who only knows how to refine pills. Ling Han smiled, and said, Say, wife, I was bullied by you quite a lot back then. However, when my cultivation level draws level with yours, it'll be time for me to bully you. Who's your wife? The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's face instantly flushed red with embarrassment. She finally believed that this Ling Han was the Ling Han from before. The fact that he could speak her true name was proof nothing could be as convincing as this. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, then who referred to themselves as the Ling family's widow. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden was extremely embarrassed. She had called herself the Ling family's widow to commemorate Ling Han and to make her determination clear. She wanted to prevent other men from having any thoughts about her. Now, however, her legitimate husband had reappeared before her. Ling Han pointed at the letter in her hand, and said, "Say, wife, do you still insist on handing that letter to me?" The heavenly phoenix divine maiden became even more embarrassed, and she instantly shattered the letter to shreds, saying, "Don't tease me, hee." Ling Han shuffled over, and said, "Come here, wife, it's already been 10,000 years. Aren't we going to reunite with a kiss? Go away." The heavenly phoenix divine maiden hurriedly pushed him back, and said, "We haven't seen each other for 10,000 years, yet you've become such a smooth talker. Have you been with other women?" When she said this, killing intent instantly started to emanate from her body. How proud a person was she? Back then, she had been a top-echelon elite in the lower realm, someone who could compete for glory with the Sword Emperor and the Saber Emperor. Her personality was like that of a queen. So, how could she tolerate sharing her man with other women? Cold sweat formed on Ling Han's forehead. The instincts of women were truly terrifying. He had barely begun to flirt with her, yet she had already caught on to something. "Right now, you're my only wife in the immortal realm," he said hurriedly. This was a big fat truth. Liu Yutong, Shui Yenyu, and the others had all been taken to the celestial realm by his jealous little lover, Hu Niu. As for Empress Luan Xing, she wasn't technically his wife yet. Thus, he was being completely honest. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden was half convinced and half suspicious. Why did his admission sound so quirky? If he didn't have any other woman, he could have just said that straight up. Why did he need to specify the immortal realm? However, he had arrived after opening the sky, which meant that the lower realm had also ascended to become a part of the immortal realm. Since he had specified the immortal realm, that naturally encompassed the lower realm as well. However, why did she feel like she was missing something? "Why did you say right now?" she asked. Ling Han chuckled, and said, "Don't you want to hear about my experiences during these past years?" An expression of curiosity and emotion appeared on her face. She had thought Ling Han dead, yet he was standing before her right now, alive and well. She was so delighted that she had forgotten to ask him about his experiences. However, she naturally wanted to hear about all his difficulties and exploits. Ling Han recounted his experiences. He naturally skimmed over the events of the lower realm, not mentioning Liu Yutong, Zhu Xian'er, and the others even once. Only when he started to recount his experiences in the immortal realm did he focus heavily on Empress Luan Xing. These two were his future wives, and perhaps they would even make love on the same bed in the future. Just thinking about this made him excited. Thus, he naturally had to give her a warning. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden was slightly displeased. This man was actually chasing another woman. Although he hadn't succeeded yet, this didn't change the fact that he was trying. If she learned about his relationship with Liu Yutong and the others, she would definitely explode in rage. Ling Han couldn't help but praise himself in his mind. Slowly revealing his relationships with the other women was indeed the smart thing to do. Otherwise, he would definitely be bullied by this violent woman, just as he had been in his previous life. When he caught up to her in cultivation, he would punish her in bed if she still insisted on complaining about his other relationships. If he did so, how could she not submit? The heavenly phoenix divine maiden shivered, and said, "Don't smile so creepily." Chapter 1249, Falling Out. Chapter 1249, Falling Out. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden only left Ling Han's tent after a long time. She learned about many of his secrets, though she still didn't know about the existence of the Black Tower yet. There were far too many people here, and the environment was also too complicated and chaotic. Ling Han would wait until it was just the two of them before bringing her into the Black Tower. Anyhow, one couldn't easily leave the army after joining. They needed to earn merit points if they wanted to leave. Thus, the most important task right now was to fight against netherworld enemies. Moreover, the army placed a lot of stress on collectivism, so it would be useless even if he retrieved the netherworld corpses from his Black Tower and handed them to her. If he did so, she would need to divide the corpses equally among everyone. This was why the army was safe, yet accumulation of merit points was slow. The army didn't promote individualism, promoting collectivism instead. Thus, Ling Han needed to wait until the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden retired from the military before he could be together with her. "Sister, what did he say?" Zhu Liyun asked nervously when she saw the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden return. There was a shy expression on her face. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden couldn't help but feel guilty. Could she say that Ling Han had always been her man? Just that they had only reunited after 10,000 years. She had initially gone to deliver a love letter for her friend. In the end, however, she had ended up striking a relationship with her friend's love interest. This, she wasn't sure what to say. Zhu Liyun's expression changed drastically, and she asked, "Did you hand the letter to Grandmaster Ling or not?" "Big Sister Yun, he's not suitable for you. It's best that you forget about him," the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden said persuasively. Zhu Liyun remained silent. She stared at the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden for a moment before saying, "You didn't fall in love with him, did you?" This wasn't incorrect. However, she had fallen in love with him a whopping 10,000 years before Zhu Liyun. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden couldn't explain this, so she could only remain silent as she gazed at her friend. "Good job, Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, good job." Zhu Liyun was infuriated, and she pointed at the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden before shouting, "B***tch, I treated you like a sister, yet this is how you repay me. You even stooped as low as stealing your sister's man. Why don't you go die?" Anger spread across the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's face, and she said, "To say nothing of whether I interfered or not, do you really think Ling Han would have definitely liked you?" "Why not?" Zhu Liyun shouted. "I'm at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier, and he's merely a level 4 or level 5 alchemist. Truth be told, it's actually he who is punching above his weight. However, even I'm not complaining about that, so what does he have to be dissatisfied about?" "Auntie, you're truly narcissistic." Right now, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden naturally knew that Ling Han hadn't been lying. He was genuinely a level 8 alchemist. Thus, those at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier truly weren't all that special before him. Their standing was at least a level below him. Firstly, you're not beautiful. Secondly, you're already a middle-aged woman. Thirdly, your status is at least a level below him. So, what right do you have to say that Ling Han's punching above his weight? Initially, she had felt guilty about not delivering the letter for Zhu Liyun. However, anger rose in her heart when she heard Zhu Liyun's words, and her feeling of guilt vanished completely. In any case, she had never owed Zhu Liyun anything. "B***tch, our friendship is done." Zhu Liyun flung her hands and left. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden shook her head. She was the only friend she had made in the Purple Moon Army. However, it was a pity that she couldn't deal with any hitches. Anyhow, Zhu Liyun obviously wouldn't give up like this. She immediately went to visit Ling Han. Since the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden couldn't deliver her feelings for her, she could only muster her courage to do so herself. In reality, she hadn't been too shy to deliver the letter before. It was just that she had wanted to give Ling Han the impression that she was reserved. However, how could Ling Han be interested in her? Even a seductive beauty like Lin Yuqi hadn't been able to move him. So, how could an ordinary-looking middle-aged woman appeal to him? More importantly, they didn't know anything about each other, okay? After suffering a polite yet firm rejection from Ling Han, Zhu Liyun returned to her tent with a dark expression on her face. There was venom in her voice as she said, "Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, I only became friends with you because of your beauty and the fact that you might have gotten into a relationship with some powerful figure. However, you actually stole my man. Humph. Since the Xie clan is looking for you, I'll give them some help." And that despicable man, he tried to sugarcoat his words, saying that he was already in love with another woman and that we were all unsuitable for him. Pay. Isn't it simply because that B***tch is more beautiful than me? You dare to humiliate me like this? Humph. When the Xie clan comes, I'll get them to kill you along with that B***tch. You're merely a level 4 or level 5 alchemist, Yet you actually dare to act so arrogantly. Humph. She released a bird that was only the size of a bee. It was a hummingbird. Although it didn't possess any offensive ability, its speed was incredibly quick. In fact, its speed was so quick that it was on par with Heavenly Body Tier Elite speed. She had only managed to capture this hummingbird by luck. After giving it some training, it was now her messaging tool. She was an experienced Sun-Moon Tier Elite, and with her merit points, she could have already retired from the military dozens of times over. However, she chose to remain in the Purple Moon Army. This was because staying in the army was much safer than venturing alone. Moreover, the steady income of merit points would allow her to purchase all kinds of alchemical pills, god tools, and such. When she had first arrived at the two-realm battlefield, she had merely been at the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier. Now, however, she had already advanced to the consummate level. She had only been able to achieve this by exchanging her merit points for a large number of alchemical pills. Of course, her own talent couldn't be discounted, either. Otherwise, just alchemical pills alone wouldn't have helped her advance so rapidly. After so many years in the Purple Moon Army, she had naturally formed her own network as well. Now that she had released her hummingbird, the Xie clan would receive her news in no time. Within 2 months, members of the Xie clan would appear here. Just you two wait. With Ling Han's help, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's reputation in the Purple Moon Army increased by the day. Everyone became aware that Ling Han was only so generous because he was pursuing the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. He was giving them alchemical pills so they could help him convince her. In the following few days, the Purple Moon Army came across netherworld beings several times. Each time, they achieved victory. During these battles, Ling Han provided them with many explosive thunder pills. Although such a pill could only increase their battle prowess by 1 star, having an entire brigade increase their battle prowess by 1 star was quite a terrifying notion. However, their continuous victories also caught the attention of the netherworld. In the end, the netherworld deployed a powerful army to hunt them down. There were 50 members in this army, and each of them was at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier. This was an unstoppable force, and the Purple Moon Army didn't dare to battle them at all. They immediately chose to retreat. The aim of their trip was to destroy some netherworld beings and to find some realm spirit stones. They had destroyed a fair number of enemies now, though they still had yet to find a single realm spirit stone. This left everyone disappointed. However, since they had already attracted the attention of more powerful elites, the brigade decided to return to the main encampment. They would venture out again after laying low for a while. Since Ling Han couldn't join the Purple Moon Army, he didn't plan to follow them back. He would explore this area by himself. He had the safety of the Black Tower anyway, so the dangers of the two-realm battlefield were relatively insignificant to him. He wanted to kill more netherworld beings and accumulate more merit points, as doing so would allow him to obtain more godly metal. Moreover, he would strike it rich if he managed to find some realm spirit stones. Doing so would allow him to obtain an exorbitant amount of godly metal. Right now, elevating the quality of the Divine Demon Sword was of utmost importance to Ling Han, only below that of increasing his own strength. He decided to venture into the depths of the two-realm battlefield and kill more netherworld beings. Chapter 1250 Netherworld King Tier. Chapter 1250 Netherworld King Tier. The old Ginseng and Rabbit both supported Ling Han's decision to venture deeper into the two-realm battlefield. After all, they still hoped that he would pummel some netherworld elites and exact revenge for them. By and large, there were only Mountain River tier and Sun Moon tier cultivators in this two-realm battlefield. Elites at the Heavenly Body tier would rarely ever appear. Once they appeared, it would signify an elevation in the severity of the battle. Although there was an ongoing conflict between the two realms, a large-scale war hadn't erupted for many years. All the conflicts were cautiously confined to controllable areas. Moreover, it was relatively dangerous to venture deep into the enemy's territory, whether one was an immortal realm elite or a netherworld elite. This was due to the starkly different regulations of heaven and earth. When in enemy territory, one's battle prowess would fall significantly. Under a different set of regulations, one would only be able to use their power and not their regulations. In fact, even one's power might be suppressed. Not only that, but the higher one's cultivation, the more severe the suppression. Take, for example, Ling Han. His power was incredible, yet due to his cultivation level, he wasn't able to comprehend higher-level regulations. Thus, even though his power surpassed 6 stars, his battle prowess could only surpass 6 stars as well. If his opponent possessed a power similar to his, yet they were able to grasp higher-level regulations, they would be able to make up for any shortcomings in their martial arts techniques. In fact, they would even be able to use their martial arts techniques to suppress him. After all, power was only one part of battle prowess. If an immortal realm elite at the high extreme of the heavenly body tier went to the netherworld, perhaps their battle prowess would fall to the medium extreme, or even low extreme. This would be incredibly dangerous. As a result, the elites of both realms didn't dare to act wantonly. Usually, they would just guard their own side of the two-realm passageway. If an enemy elite dared to go over, they would simply kill them, easy and enjoyable. However, Ling Han's strong suit was his power, and his cultivation level was also relatively low. Thus, the suppression of the netherworld regulations wasn't especially evident on him. In other words, he would barely be affected even if he ventured into the netherworld. Moreover, he had refined the demonic power source of a demon master. Although it had only been a small amount, demon masters were the most powerful beings of the netherworld. As long as he circulated this demonic chi, he naturally wouldn't be suppressed by the regulations of the netherworld. This was an extremely important advantage. Ling Han wandered through the two-realm battlefield and familiarized himself with the ever-changing regulations. He tried his best to harmonize himself with the regulations of the two realms. Right now, he was essentially cultivating with the regulations of both realms. It was just that he was drawing on lower-level regulations. However, this was perfect for his current cultivation level. After a dozen or so days, Ling Han became completely accustomed to this place. He had taken to it like fish to water. In this two-realm battlefield, both the cultivators of the immortal realm and the netherworld would be suppressed to a certain degree. However, Ling Han wasn't affected at all. He could maintain 100% of his battle prowess. However, he hadn't managed to find a single realm spirit stone in his dozen or so days here. This left the old ginseng and rabbit extremely displeased. What a cheap place, the old ginseng grumbled. He seemed tired, and he retrieved a doo-doo to wipe the sweat off his forehead. If I had known this earlier, I might as well have stayed back to watch those women change. We didn't even find that netherworld brat, Rabbit said angrily. There was a cold glint in his completely red eyes. Meanwhile, Ling Han sat down, planning to grab a bite. Even in a place like this, he couldn't shake off his habit as a foodie. He started a fire and placed some demonic beast meat in a large pot. He then added some nutritious godly medicines. It wasn't long before a fragrant smell wafted from the pot. Ling Han couldn't help but sigh in emotion. There were no demonic beasts to hunt here, so a bite of meat eaten would mean a bite of meat less. What would he do when he ran out of meat? Add an egg in. I've heard that eggs are very nutritious. There was an egg in Rabbit's paws, and he was just about to toss it into the pot. Grandpa Ginseng agrees. The old ginseng raised his arms in approval, and said, "Before I achieved Dao, I was almost killed by an eagle and a rabbit. Now's the time to exact revenge. Uncle Rabbit will eat you." Rabbit shot back. This old ginseng actually dared to taunt him? Peng. Ling Han threw a fist over. Rabbit actually dared to have thoughts about the egg that he had taken out to sunbathe? Ah! Rabbit wailed in agony. The old ginseng laughed triumphantly upon seeing this. After a short while, the nutritious meat soup was ready to be served. The three people started to eat voraciously. The old ginseng hadn't been a foodie before, yet the bad influence of the other two had already rubbed off on him. He was also a foodie now, and his appetite was more so tremendous. Rabbit kicked the sunbathing egg, and asked, "Brat, what kind of egg is this? It seems fairly extraordinary." He still hadn't given up on his desire to eat this egg. "Bird egg," Ling Han replied. He moved the egg behind himself lest it was damaged by Rabbit's kicks. If that were to happen, cooking and eating it would be the only option. Good bird or bad bird, the old ginseng asked on purpose. He knew that Rabbit had an immense hatred for birds. Before achieving Tao, Rabbit had often been hunted by all kinds of birds. Rabbit's expression instantly became dark. Ling Han was just about to speak, yet his heart shivered, and he said, "Enemy." Rabbit and old ginseng hurriedly prepared to tunnel away. They shamelessly left Ling Han to deal with the enemy by himself. If there were any problems, it was only natural that the strongest person dealt with it themselves. It would be naive to think that the old ginseng and Rabbit would fight with their lives on the line. Fuck! Ling Han exclaimed in his mind. Meanwhile, his gaze was fixed on a nearby hill. A slender figure had appeared there, and they were standing with their hands clasped behind their back. Their clothes fluttered in the gentle breeze. Netherworld being. This was obvious at a single glance. This person's aura was completely different from immortal realm cultivators. It was eerie and sinister, and it stood out as obviously as the sun in the sky. However, what astonished Ling Han was the fact that this person looked just like a human. Only their aura was starkly different. This person looked around 20-year-old, and they appeared especially strong and handsome. "It's him!" Rabbit and old ginseng exclaimed at the same time. They pointed at the man, and shouted, "Little Han, that's the bastard who chased us. He's the netherworld being who chased Rabbit and the old ginseng, and wanted to make them into a rabbit ginseng soup. Kill him. Grandpa Ginseng is going to break his vegetarian fast and eat a netherworld human meat bun today." Rabbit and old ginseng both shouted enthusiastically. However, both of them retreated even further back. It was clear that they had no plans to charge over and fight to the death. The netherworld youth leaped over, landing 30 or so meters in front of Ling Han. A powerful aura radiated from his body. He was clearly at the sun-moon tier, yet he gave Ling Han a completely different feeling. Those in the immortal realm possessed the power of construction, while those in the netherworld possessed the power of destruction. These were two opposing regulations of heaven and earth. "Move aside," the young man commanded. "You don't have the right to die by my hand. How bloody arrogant." Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, "Maybe not, but perhaps you have the right to die by my hand." The young man's eyes twitched. Boom! 2 balls of flames flashed across his eyes, each releasing a devastating might. It was as if they could melt even godly metal. Ling Han's fighting spirit soared. He was a king tier, a netherworld king tier. This was a decent opponent. "I'm Ao Ziyun, the prince of the Black Dragon race." "Who are you?" the young man said calmly. The shadow of a black true dragon materialized behind his back. It brandished its teeth and claws, and it exuded an overwhelming pressure. "Strange," Ling Han exclaimed in his mind. "There's a dragon tribe in the netherworld. And their surname is also Ao? Why do they look just like the dragon tribe in the immortal realm? But the two realms are at odds with each other. Could members of these tribes have married each other?" Ling Han smiled calmly, and said, "I'm Ling Han. If you can survive 3 of my attacks, I'll spare your life," Ao Ziyun said coldly. Chapter 1251, The Stronger the Enemy, the Stronger I Will Be. Chapter 1251, The Stronger the Enemy, the Stronger I Will Be. Ling Han involuntarily laughed. In this world, there did not exist one person in the same cultivation level that could kill him within 3 moves. This Ao Ziyun was only in the low extreme, and his aura was slightly stronger than Ling Han's, so he was either in the late stage or the peak stage. "You are very confident. Only stepping on those like you is interesting," Ling Han said. Ao Ziyun coldly replied, "Humph, even if you do not die within 3 moves, I will still teach you a lesson." He had been enraged by Ling Han. The latter actually said he wanted to step on him. Did he even know what his status as a prince of the Black Dragon race represented? He moved, and delivered a palm strike. A humongous black dragon's claw immediately descended from the skies, pressing down on Ling Han. Wang, wang, wang. Multiple divine patterns appeared, interweaving into frightening black flames. Black dragons were skilled in using fire. This was a supreme divine flame, and would be able to burn anything. Ling Han was slightly surprised. He was a descendant of the true dragon? Powerful, He was indeed very powerful. He had a feeling that if he allowed the other to burn him like this, even one with a physique like his would be forcefully turned to ashes. Of course, this was definitely not something that could be accomplished in a short while. No matter what, it would have to take 10 to 15 days. However, it was still capable of doing so, after all. For example, if there were a few more people with considerable abilities to entrap him, then these black flames would be greatly effective. Indeed, he could not underestimate the people in this world. Ling Han flicked a finger, and used the lightning sword technique. Shio, shio, shio. Immediately, sword chi swept forth, sweeping out towards that dragon claw. Pu, 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 pu. Sword chi swept over madly, and cracks rapidly appeared on that claw. Then, it collapsed, being forcefully shattered. Ao Ziyun couldn't help but be slightly surprised, and said, "I had not thought that you would really have some ability." "He, if I didn't have a bit of ability, I would not dare to roam around here," Ling Han replied calmly. Realization dawned on Ao Ziyun, and he asked, "You are also here to participate in the Two-Realm Prodigy Gathering?" "What Two-Realm Prodigy Gathering?" Ling Han muttered internally, yet showed nothing of his thoughts on his face, and asked, "You as well?" "Of course. If I am unqualified, who else would be?" Ao Ziyun asked proudly. "I forgot to tell you, I rather dislike arrogant people like you," Ling Han said. "So what about it?" Ao Ziyun smirked coldly. "Then just let me first test the waters, and check whether you are qualified to participate or not." He moved once more, attacking Ling Han again. It was still another palm strike that had turned into a dragon claw. However, this time, the whole claw was entwined with black flames, and it was like a monster that had been nurtured by the heaven and earth, ready to destroy this world. Ling Han breathed in a mouthful of air, and then suddenly blew it out. A wild gust of wind blew, sweeping over that dragon claw. Instantly, the fierce flames were forcefully extinguished, only leaving behind a barren dragon claw that was still determinedly pressing downwards. However, the power of the attack had lessened greatly, and it no longer posed a threat. Involuntarily, a muscle twitched in Ao Ziyun's cheek. "You did that on purpose, didn't you? And you call me arrogant? You blew out a breath of air and easily extinguished my divine flames, so aren't you even more arrogant?" However, this brat really could not be underestimated. That black flame was his bloodline talent, and added with the fact that he had fused in regulations of the heaven and earth, it should not be something that could be blocked by someone who was only in the low extreme of the sun-moon tier. It should be known that he was a cultivator of the netherworld realm that could kill a great many in the high extreme of sun-moon tier with his black flames. All of them were unable to fight off the might of the black flames. He had not thought that they would instead be blocked by someone who was similarly in the low extreme. He was matched by one in the same cultivation level. What did that mean? That the other was also a king tier. A powerful fighting spirit rose up in Ao Ziyun. His cultivation level was actually higher than Ling Han's as he was in the peak stage of the low extreme. If he could not very quickly suppress this opponent, then wouldn't that mean he was inferior to him? "Humph, how could there possibly be geniuses in the immortal realm that could equal me?" he said, smirking coldly. He leaped up and charged out. This time, he had gotten serious. A black dragon was soaring furiously behind him, boosting his aura incredibly. Hong! He stimulated a burning black cloud. Wherever it passed, the ground would be burnt to the point of cracking. The rocks that protruded would be turned into nothing. Ling Han was unafraid. He used the star plucking step and headed towards the other party. As he shot out a fist, it brought supreme forcefulness with it. "Who cares if you are a dragon or a worm? In front of me, you would only be suppressed." Peng, 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 peng. The two clashed. Two fists endlessly crashed into each other, every impact causing the whole heaven and earth to pale in color. They were obviously merely in the low extreme of the mountain river tier, yet this might would make one suspect that this was actually the deadly clash between two great elites of the heavenly body tier. "Little Han, use more force. Shatter every bone in this brat's body, and we'll be feasting on dragon ribs today. Grandpa Ginseng is already craving for food, wanting to drink the **** fresh blood of the netherworld jerk." Rabbit and the old ginseng cheered on Ling Han from the sidelines, yet these two guys were really horrible, their words extremely insulting. Ao Ziyun was both shocked and furious. As an elite, he was naturally capable of listening in on all directions even in the midst of battle. The old ginseng's and Rabbit's words naturally did not escape his ears. They actually said they wanted to dine on his dragon ribs. This bunch was really detestable. Yet Ling Han's abilities also stunned him. In the two-realm battlefield, the regulations were extremely muddled because of the clash between the two realms, and would cause a cultivator's battle prowess to fall greatly. Yet this kind of weakening ability applied to both sides. If I became weaker, so would you. Furthermore, in this place, the regulations of the netherworld should be slightly stronger. In theory, he should be slightly better off than Ling Han in being weakened. Yet the two of them were actually tied. He was obviously 2 sub-minor levels higher than the other. This was suppression on the level of 2 stars of power. Furthermore, he was at an advantage in terms of location as well, and even then, they were at a draw. Then if this had been a place where the regulations of the two realms were equal, wouldn't he have lost? Yet he did not know that Ling Han possessed demonic essence, and could adapt to the regulations of both realms, and was not the slightest bit weakened. The one at a disadvantage was actually just himself, but because he did not know, he couldn't help but be filled with a powerful wariness of Ling Han. How was this being from the immortal realm so freakish? He was actually able to fight himself to a draw even with the power gap of 2 stars between them. It should be known that he was also a super genius that had cultivated the mountain river tier to the true pinnacle. Quite strong, but still not enough. Ao Ziyun was naturally not about to give up so easily. With a loud shout, he no longer stuck to competing with Ling Han in mere strength, but rather used a secret technique, causing his battle prowess to spike madly. Ling Han countered each move using his fingers like a sword, and used the lightning sword technique. Sword chi danced, both fast and vicious. You were strong, but so was I. It was really hard to decide who was stronger between the two of them. Not just Ao Ziyun was stunned, even Ling Han himself felt secretly rueful. There were indeed innumerable prodigies in this world. It should be known that this was only a passageway of the two realms, and in the immortal realm, there were uncountable such passageways. If he encountered this kind of genius in any two-realm battlefield, then how many prodigies would there be in the entire netherworld? However, in a battle of equal levels, he was the true invincible one. Ling Han was filled with confidence because his biggest strength was his spirit and physique, and it was still far from the point when they would be clashing in these two areas. The indestructible Heaven Scroll should be the highest-level secret technique in the celestial realm. He had been forcefully instilled with power from the Black Tower, and had thus slowly mastered it comprehensively. He absolutely did not believe that there was any technique that could match it in the immortal realm. Dragon's might! Ao Ziyun exclaimed. Wang, the image of the black dragon behind him instantly exuded a terrifying might. Even those in the high extreme of the Sun-Moon tier would possibly feel a coldness from this might, thus causing their battle prowess to greatly decline. Chapter 1252, Heaven's Might vs. Dragon's Might. Chapter 1252, Heaven's Might vs. Dragon's Might. The true dragon was a very frightening creature. According to legends, it was a beloved child of heaven and earth. It was born powerful, and when it matured, it was a being of the Genesis tier. This would be enough to cause all other living beings to die of envy. Without needing to cultivate, merely eating, drinking, and sleeping, it would automatically reach the Genesis tier. However, being loved by the heavens was only limited to those with a pure bloodline of the true dragon. Once the bloodline watered down, they could not possibly reach Genesis tier as easily as that. Perhaps they might even be no different from ordinary living beings, and merely possess some special abilities. Like the dragon's might. The true dragon released its might, and even heaven and earth would pale. Ao Ziyun's bloodline was naturally far from pure, and if he wanted to break through to the Genesis tier, he could only depend on his own efforts and good luck. His bloodline would not have much influence on his chances. Of course, if he reached the Genesis tier, his bloodline would then completely become the bloodline of the true dragon, and if he married another true dragon, the children of this union would very possibly inherit this kind of bloodline, and reach the Genesis tier easily. Presently, Aoziun's dragons might naturally could not compare to the true dragons. After all, it was limited by his cultivation level, but when he released the might of his bloodline, it was still very, very frightening. Even if it was an opponent in the high extreme of the Sun-Moon tier, with a strike from his dragon's might like this, his abilities would also drop greatly by at least 1 or 2 stars. What ancient divine beast was not extremely awesome? Furthermore, the true dragon was the head of the divine beasts, with only the true phoenix capable of matching it. As this strike of dragon's might shot out, it turned solid, and enshrouded a threshold of an entire 10 miles. Which also meant that within 10 miles, every living creature's battle prowess would drop by 1 to 2 stars. Facing my dragon's might, what right do you have to be insolent? Aoziun smirked coldly. This brat from the immortal realm could not be considered weak. He actually forced him to use dragon's might. Wang, dragon's might attacked, and roared like a real dragon in Linghan's mind, wanting to intimidate him. Dragon's might? Linghan acted as if he felt nothing. What a joke. He was a man who had grasped heaven's might if worse came to worst. He had previously refined the demonic power source. And what level was the demon master at? The Genesis tier. Both were in the Genesis tier, so who would be afraid of the other? Moreover, Aoziun's abilities were still far from reaching the level of a true dragon. And he still wanted to intimidate him like this. What? Seeing Linghan was still standing proudly and firmly like a mountain, Aoziun couldn't help the change in his expression. This was too inconceivable. This person was actually not affected by his dragon's might. He had tried it before, and those superior to him by at least 2 minor levels are those that similarly possessed the bloodline of an ancient divine beast, such as the true phoenix or the black tortoise, would be able to remain completely immune to his dragon's might. Could it be that this young man from the immortal realm was also a descendant of a divine beast? This time, he had really met his match. Linghan grinned widely, and said, don't worry, don't worry. I am not a descendant of a divine beast. My bloodline is very clean, and I am no animal. Little Han, who are you insulting? Who are you calling an animal? Rabbit flared up first, calling out loudly from a distance. He actually called him an animal? That was too insulting. Aoziun's face was similarly ugly. The bloodline of the true dragon was his pride, but in Linghan's eyes, it had actually been degraded to the level of an animal. He could not tolerate this. Then allow me to see how much better you are than an animal, he roared loudly. Multiple flaming black clouds surged out of his body as if they planned to directly burn the skies. As you wish. Linghan channeled the heaven's might. Hong, the dragon's might in the surroundings, was instantly dispersed. The true dragon was awesome, but wasn't it still born out of the heaven and earth? How could it compare to the heaven and earth itself? Heaven's might was the strongest might in the world. At least that was the case in the immortal realm. What? Aoziun instantly paled. He discovered that his power had actually dropped rapidly by as much as a whole star. This was practically a joke. He stimulated the dragon's might to reduce his opponent's abilities, but he had never imagined that he would have the tables turned on him, being affected by Linghan. His power shouldn't have been weakened by a star. A shudder came over him. The other was obviously only one person, so why did he give off the feeling like he was as mighty as a divine god? In front of him, he was no true dragon, but clearly an insignificant earthworm. Little water snake, do you now know our awesomeness? Rabbit called out from afar. In comparison, he was naturally more displeased with Aoziun. Aoziun forcibly boosted his fighting spirit, yet could not recover his power no matter what, and was firmly suppressed by the heaven's might. He gritted his teeth. So what if he had 1 less star of power? Power was only one part of battle prowess, and not the only factor. He drew out a long spear. Upon a closer look, the spear's body was actually made from the spine of a dragon, with a murderous aura bubbling around it. It actually resisted a portion of the heaven's might. Linghan couldn't help but feel surprised. This dragon bone was actually capable of standing against heaven's might. This was really exceptional. He smilingly asked, Which ancestor's dragon bone is this that you have actually made into a weapon? Aren't you afraid that your old ancestor would not get peace even in death? Humph, all the bones of those of our Ao clan would be made into weapons to benefit our descendants for many generations. Even I will be no exception, Ao Ziyun uttered icily. So don't even think you can use this method to beat down on my fighting spirit. Ling Han laughed, and said, you really think too highly of yourself. Stepping on a character like you won't require me to use any psychological trick. Then just try out my Dark Destruction Black Dragon Spear. Ao Ziyun moved, brandishing the spear as he charged to attack Ling Han. This spear was truly exceptional. Dragon's might surged out like an old dragon from the ancient era had been revived, wanting to penetrate the skies and flatten the realm. Wang, the divine demon sword was drawn. If they were competing in god tools, how could Ling Han be afraid? Once the divine demon sword was drawn, endless divine might instantly set forth. This was a future divine metal. Even if this was a treasured spear forged from the bones of an old dragon, so what? Faced with the suppression of the divine demon sword, it trembled madly, its dragon's might completely extinguished. This was a suppression from a superior level. Even if the divine demon sword was only level 5, it had reached a frightening extent in terms of quality. Ao Ziyun was stunned. Why was he suppressed on all sides by Ling Han? Furthermore, he still had the advantage of 2 subminor levels. If that was not the case, then wouldn't he have to accept a terrible loss? How could there be such a freakish guy in the immortal realm? This caused him to recall a man that could not be defeated. At the time, when they had been on the same cultivation levels, he had lost terribly, and now, the gap between the two could hardly be controlled. This kind of painful experience, would he have to go through it another time? In front of the true dragon, all beings will have to bow. He released a dragon roar, his hands forming into complete sets of dragon claws. Wielding the bone spear, he stabbed out at Ling Han. Dragon's might surged forth, and he was like the true son of the heavens. Ling Han laughed, and brandished his sword in a slash. Sword projections interwove closely, and he was like a divine emperor. So what if you were the son of the heavens? In front of the divine emperor, you would only be able to bow your head. At first, the two were still in a battle between equals, but once Ling Han showed the heavens' might, he gained the upper hand. Now, the two of them had drawn their respective god tools, and the gap between Ao Ziyun and Ling Han was even wider. He was being completely suppressed. The divine demon sword burst out with endless sword chi. Every flash of sword chi was equivalent to a full power attack from Ling Han, and with the combined slash of millions of sword projections, who would be able to block that? Using the divine demon sword and not using the divine demon sword would place Ling Han at 2 completely different levels of battle prowess. Chapter 1253, Our Realm Has Prodigies. Chapter 1253, Our Realm Has Prodigies. Faced with Ling Han's aggressiveness, even Ao Ziyun could only make a tactical retreat. The two of them fought all the way, and Ao Ziyun kept retreating. Who knew how many mountain rocks they had shattered in their battle? Some mountain river tier cultivators they met on their way were almost scared witless. Whether they were beings of the immortal realm or the netherworld, they all ran far, far away. If they were affected by the aftermath of the battle, even if they did not die, they would be severely injured. Even elites of the sun-moon tier would be wary, what more when they were mountain river tiers. They only dared watch from afar, and did not dare to come too close. Otherwise, even they would suffer a calamity. Those who could watch the battle from a close distance would at least have to be in the high extreme of the sun-moon tier. However, when they discovered that the two people fighting were only in the low extreme, even those at the consummate level of the sun-moon tier broke out in a cold sweat. Prodigies like them would not possibly need tens of thousands of years to catch up to them. Damn it! Ao Ziyun shouted fiercely. Just think, he was invincible at his cultivation level in the netherworld, and had only ever lost to one person. Furthermore, that person was indeed an extraordinary genius. He was resigned to his loss, and did not feel that he had lost unfairly. But a freak like that had actually appeared from the immortal realm as well. I am dissatisfied. I am dissatisfied. A vein popped out on his forehead. Since the heavens allowed the birth of a prodigy like him, why would a person like Ling Han still come out, causing him trouble and grievance? Ling Han shook his head, and said, "You look too highly upon yourself. With how big the world is, how many corners have you been to? What the world lacks the least is prodigies. Don't think too much of yourself." Ling Han, for example, had just been to 2 galaxies, and he had already met a considerable number of prodigies, like He Dao and Wu Wentong. Which of them was not a well-known figure of their generation? If they battled on an equal level, none of them would be inferior to Ao Ziyun. He had not been to the netherworld, but he believed that the size of the netherworld would not be less than the immortal realms. Even eternal river tears could only travel in a limited range, so who knew how many prodigies there were in this world? There would always be someone stronger, and there was only the difference of a hair's breadth between confidence and arrogance. Ling Han, I admit that you are very strong, but compared to the prodigies of my realm, you still have a long way to go. Ao Ziyun knew that he could not possibly defeat Ling Han. Even if he used his divine seals and alchemical pills to obtain victory, that would not be a victory born from his own abilities. A conceited prodigy like him would naturally disdain using this kind of methods to win. He would only use them to save his life. In a battle of equals, a loss was a loss. Otherwise, it would only be more of a humiliation to him. But now that it involved the 2 realms, he was naturally not going to allow Ling Han to continue being proud. Oh, is that right? Ling Han smiled faintly. That's right. My realm has a prodigy whose name is Kai Huangji. He has only been cultivating for 200 years, and he has already broken through to the pinnacle level of the Sun-Moon tier. Compared to him, you are like the light of a firefly as compared to the light of the bright moon. There is practically no need to mention you. Ao Ziyun belittled Ling Han greatly. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh secretly. If he was really so weak, then what would Ao Ziyun be considered? However, advancing into the pinnacle level of the Sun-Moon tier in 200 years? This was extremely frightening. It should be known how many Sun-Moon tiers would be able to break through to the heavenly body tier. This ratio would probably be 1 to 10,000, but to be able to cultivate to pinnacle level of the Sun-Moon tier and break through to the heavenly body tier from there would only be 1 in 10,000 of heavenly body tiers that could accomplish that. How difficult was it? As difficult as climbing the skies. And this Kai Huangji actually used a mere 200 years to reach the pinnacle level of the Sun-Moon tier, which also meant that if he was willing to, he completely could break through to the heavenly body tier in 200 years' time. With such a comparison, it was clear how utterly frightening this man was. Though Ling Han had only been cultivating up to 30 years at present, after he had crossed over into the immortal level, he had used the reincarnation tree's power many times, comprehending Tao underneath the tree, whereby a day would be equivalent to a year. In truth, the time that he had spent comprehending his cultivation level had far exceeded 200 years. Perhaps, this Kai Huangji has a treasure similar to the Black Tower, which can speed up the passing of time, he deduced. That was because Small Tower had once said that when the Black Tower recovered completely, it could unlock the ability to speed up time. Spending a day in the Black Tower, it could be 10 days, a month, or even several years in the outside world. This was not just speeding up the mind, but the whole person. Even cultivation could be sped up. Ling Han chuckled. Advancing quickly through the cultivation levels was not his trump card. The indestructible body he had obtained through the indestructible heavens scroll was. He was naturally not going to clarify this to the other party, and merely said, "Fine then I will wait to meet this person." You will. 3 years later, at the 2-realm prodigy gathering, Kai Huangji will let you taste the meaning of the word hopelessness. Ao Ziyun withdrew his spear. He took out a divine seal and stuck it on himself. Instantly, his speed spiked madly. Even if Ling Han used the star-plucking step, he could only pull even with him at most. Ling Han did not pursue. If he continued further, it would be the territory of the netherworld. Who knew how many elites were standing by there? At present, his power was still not quite enough. He stopped and withdrew the divine demon sword. A powerful pressure rose up in his heart. If he wanted to overthrow the 5 sects, he would have to be at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier at the very least. If it was in mere terms of battle prowess, it was still not enough, because the 5 sects had existed for so many years, so who knew how many trump cards they had? Thus, only if he was at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier would it be absolutely safe. In any case, he had already been waiting for so many years, so Ling Han did not mind waiting for a few more years. However, he definitely could not be rash and screw himself as well. Shoo. One after another, figures appeared. They were all in the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier, and they all targeted Ling Han. They were elites of the netherworld, none of them hiding the killing intent in their eyes. This young man from the immortal realm was too freakish. They had to get rid of him as soon as possible. If they allowed him to mature and grow, that would be a great disaster for the netherworld. Hehe, you people are dreaming. There naturally were also elites at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier from the side of the immortal realm nearby too. They had long sensed the commotion, and had rushed over to watch the excitement. Now that they saw that those from the netherworld wanted to do harm to Ling Han, they stepped out as well. Charge! The elites from the netherworld were very decisive. The two realms had been at war for so many years, so they had long since become as incompatible as fire and water. What need was there to be reserved? They immediately began a bloody battle. Young man, you go first, an elite from the immortal realm called out to Ling Han. In truth, no one would be willing to fight a battle that they were uncertain of winning. Hence, the elites of the immortal realm moved only for the purpose of protecting Ling Han's life, but did not think of eliminating all these beings from the netherworld. If they fought this battle to the end, then no matter who was the last one standing, they would all have to pay a very high price. While it was true that everyone came to the two-realm battlefield to resist the invasion of the other realm, they were also aiming for merit points as well as realm spirit stones. Who would be willing to truly battle to the death? Thus, once Ling Han ran, this battle naturally could no longer be continued. Ling Han nodded, and used the star-plucking step. It was as if his figure was flying, and he instantly disappeared into the distance. Previously, the elites of the immortal realm could not stop Aoziun, and now, the elites of the netherworld were also unable to stop Ling Han. No, my present cultivation level is still too low. I have to think of some way to quickly improve my cultivation level. Otherwise, 3 years later, if I go and join that two-realm prodigy gathering, I will definitely not be a match for Kai Huangji, Ling Han thought as he continued running. Chapter 1254, Tempered by Divine Flame. Chapter 1254, Tempered by Divine Flame. Ling Han was confident, but definitely not arrogant. After breaking out of the siege, Ling Han stopped, and waited for the old ginseng and Rabbit to come over. When they arrived, Ling Han asked, "Rabbit, do you want to go to a good place?" "What good place?" Rabbit asked. He had not entered into the Black Tower yet. Ling Han laughed, and threw the old ginseng into the Black Tower first. Then, he grabbed Rabbit, and the both of them entered together. What kind of place is this? Rabbit could not be any more stunned. A spatial god tool was something that he didn't dare to even think about. There, go and cultivate there. Ling Han threw him underneath the reincarnation tree, and did not bother to explain. He just let the old ginseng and him torment themselves. After a short while, he heard Rabbit making a big fuss. He had really been stunned. If he comprehended Tao underneath this divine tree, then wouldn't there be a chance for him to reach the Genesis tier? Ling Han chuckled, and summoned Small Tower over. He asked, "Is there a way to quickly erase the alchemic poison in my body?" Small Tower sank slightly, and said, "Yes." Ling Han was immediately elated, and quickly asked, "Quickly, tell me, what do I do?" If he could really speed up the dispersal of the alchemic poison in his body, he could reach consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier in a very short period of time. Then, he could advance into the pinnacle level, and then charge up to the peak of the pinnacle level. The 4th floor of the Black Tower is already unlocked. It can provide divine flame once every 3 months to temper your body. Underneath the divine flame, everything inside your body would be completely burnt, Small Tower said calmly. A muscle involuntarily twitched in Ling Han's cheek. Why did that sound so terrifying? However, The Black Tower could provide a divine flame to temper his physique. This was something that Small Tower had said long ago. It was just that Small Tower had not spoken of this again, and he was close to forgetting completely about it. He probed, "Then would I be in danger?" "Yes." Small Tower nodded. "If you cannot survive, you will be turned into ash. No, you wouldn't be able to leave even ashes behind, but rather would be burnt completely into nothing. And I would no longer have to bear with an idiotic master like you." "Fuck, you'd Sunder Tower, will you die if you don't mock me?" Ling Han thought for a moment, and then asked, "Why didn't you tell me before? You want to die so badly?" Small Tower countered first with a question, and then said, "At first, I wanted to wait until you had reached the heavenly body tier before allowing you to temper your heavenly body, and boost up your physique to another level." Actually, Small Tower was a softie at heart. It had already planned out the future for Ling Han. It should be the direction that was most beneficial for Ling Han's development. It only liked to mock Ling Han all the time. Ling Han was pleasantly surprised, and asked, "You mean that I can further improve my physique, and reach the extent of surpassing 2 minor levels?" Surpassing 2 minor levels is a little exaggerated, but you would definitely be much stronger than now. Furthermore, if you were refined by divine flame, the biggest effect would be to allow you to gain the possibility of rising from the ashes, Small Tower said. Ling Han immediately looked determined, and said, "There is no need to consider it. I want to be tempered by the divine flame." In the small world, his physique surpassed his cultivation level by a major tier. He was practically a monster among his peers, and it was impossible that anyone would be able to wound him. Even those a major tier higher than him would find much difficulty to accomplish this feat. But in the immortal realm? Sorry, his physique had only surpassed a minor level, and that was too dangerous. In truth, as long as his battle prowess was over 4 stars, anyone could possibly injure him because 4 stars represented a minor level. Though 5-star geniuses were claimed to only exist in myths, there were still such prodigies in reality. Furthermore, Ling Han himself was this kind of prodigy. Thus, the chances that he would meet such geniuses was considerably high. Hence, his present physique was not invincible among his peers, but only very, very awesome. Also, why would it be rising from the ashes? Ling Han asked. You would be cultivating the indestructible flame of life, and just like the immortal phoenix, you would be reborn from death by flame, Small Tower said. One part of the indestructible heaven scroll is based on the secret technique of the immortal phoenix, turning death to life, and that is a supreme secret technique. Immortal phoenix? Ling Han asked in surprise. Not the true phoenix. He, compared to the immortal phoenix, what would a true phoenix count as? Small Tower asked with much disdain. That indestructible heaven scroll would still have to refer to the secret technique of that divine beast, celestial beast. Ling Han asked curiously. Primal chaos origin beast, 1,000 transformations tortoise, diamond ant, they all are the very most supreme beings of the celestial realm, and have been melted and fused into one by the heavenly venerable tier to finally nurture the indestructible heaven scroll. Small Tower said very proudly. Of course, the most important thing is that the heavenly venerable tier comprehended the ultimate regulations, and that is the true essence of the indestructible heaven scroll. Ling Han gave an O. He had not yet entered into the celestial realm, so did not know how awesome the primal chaos origin beast and 1,000 transformations tortoise that Small Tower was speaking of were. In any case, all he had to know was that the indestructible heaven scroll was the best and the strongest, and that was enough. Come on, then. Ling Han nodded. He longed for power, whether it was for the sake of overthrowing the 5 sects, or for the 2-realm prodigy gathering 3 years later to meet that Kai Huangji. You have to think it through carefully. If you are unable to survive, then you would be completely erased. Small Tower said seriously. With your talent, it is not impossible that you would be able to survive the divine flame at the sun-moon tier, but the danger would still be very high. And if you undergo it when you are in the heavenly body tier, your chances would be much higher. Ling Han laughed, and said, Since you have already said that I could survive it, I trust that I definitely can. Small Tower nodded, and said, I will give you 3 days' time to revise the indestructible heaven scroll carefully one more time. You have to completely understand every single detail. This is the key to your being able to survive the tempering by the divine flame. Otherwise, your only path would be death. After that, it will have to depend on your willpower. Without the resolve to overcome everything and walk to the end, you will only be completely burnt by the divine flame. All right. Ling Han meditated beneath the reincarnation tree, revising the indestructible heaven scroll completely, and studying every detail within. After ensuring that he was really capable of channeling it by will, he stood. 5 days' time had passed, instead of the 3 days that Small Tower had said. This was comprehending Tao for a total of 5 years. Let's begin, Ling Han said in a deep voice. Small Tower sent Ling Han to a far place. There was actually a gigantic cauldron here, with an ancient air to it. Ling Han had never seen one like this. Yi, why did a cauldron suddenly appear out of nowhere? Ling Han was surprised. Small Tower, exactly how many things have you hidden from me? Small Tower did not answer. Hey, I'm talking to you. Ling Han called out loudly. Oh, were you? Only now did Small Tower speak up. I didn't hear you just now, what were you saying? Ling Han repeated his question, but Small Tower was still stupefied. Fuck, this Thunder Tower hadn't wanted to reply to him in the first place, and that was why it had acted dumb. Now that he thought about it, he was really naive that he would actually believe that a tool spirit would actually experience problems with hearing. Go in. Small Tower shook slightly. The cauldron opened. Hong, ferocious flames immediately shot up into the skies. In comparison, Ao Ziyun's black flames were practically child's play. Ling Han couldn't help but grit his teeth. Jumping into this kind of divine flame, he would definitely be turned into ashes. Was this really tempering, or just him going off to his death? Remember, the only thing that can save you is the indestructible heaven scroll. You need only continuously channel the indestructible heaven scroll. As for other matters, forget them completely, Small Tower said seriously. To be capable of seeking life in death, and to return by rising from the ashes, that is the key. Don't ever think of resisting this kind of flame, that is an absolutely impossible thing to do. Because they are not divine flames, but immortal flames. Fuck. Chapter 1255 Rising from the Ashes. Chapter 1255 Rising from the Ashes. Immortal flames. To say nothing of immortal flames, even level 6 divine flames could incinerate Ling Han if he were burned for half a year or even a year. His physique was indeed powerful, but it still couldn't withstand being burned for so long. If he were burned by level 7 divine flames, 10 to 15 days would be enough to incinerate him. As for level 8, 9, or 10 divine flames, these could probably incinerate him in an instant. Immortal flames. Heh. Entering these flames would be seeking death. He wouldn't be able to withstand these flames even if he were at the heavenly body tier. He was only at the sun-moon tier right now, so how could he possibly withstand them? What, are you scared? Small Tower asked. It didn't urge him to enter. Ling Han grimaced, and said, Are you sure I can rise from the ashes? In the outside world, even level 8 divine flames can incinerate you in an instant, to say nothing of immortal flames, Small Tower said calmly. Here, however, you can maintain a small portion of your divine sense. This portion of divine sense will be undying, and it will allow you to channel the indestructible heaven scroll. Whenever you comprehend the profound mystery of rising from the ashes is when your body will reappear. Small Tower paused for a moment before adding, moreover, there are some tiny imperfections in your body even though you fused your two souls together. Only by rising from the ashes can you fully fuse the two versions of yourself. Ling Han gritted his teeth, and resolutely leaped into the cauldron. He was genuinely diving into flames. Ling Han mocked himself as he channeled the indestructible heaven scroll. Boom. He was swallowed by the terrifying flames, and he wasn't able to resist a single bit as he was incinerated into nothingness. This was the power of immortal flames. Its level was far too transcendent. Even if Notionless Saint were to come, and even if he were at his peak, he wouldn't be able to escape the fate of being incinerated by the immortal flames. Under normal circumstances, Ling Han would already be dead. However, A mysterious power in the Black Tower protected a wisp of his divine sense. It was only a wisp of his divine sense, not his entire divine sense. The immortal flames could incinerate even divine sense. Ling Han felt as if he had returned to 10,000 years ago. At that time, the Black Tower had obliterated his body, leaving him with only a wisp of his divine sense. He had comprehended the indestructible heaven's scroll in that peculiar state, and he had only been reborn after 10,000 years. He was in a similar state at this moment. His body had been obliterated, and he couldn't move at all. However, he still had to endure being burned by the immortal flames. This was extremely excruciating. As this was a torturous pain that cut straight into his divine sense, it was impossible for him to lose consciousness. He was forced to endure this profound suffering. This made him want to scream. However, he had no physical body now, so he couldn't scream even if he wanted to. A thought suddenly surged into his mind. Why don't I just give up and die? This pain is far too unbearable. Ling Han was shocked by the appearance of this thought. So, it turned out that he still hadn't severed his thoughts of hesitation and cowardice. Now that he was experiencing such boundless pain, these feelings were finally exploding in his mind. He tried to suppress this thought, yet the immortal flames burned through to his soul. Excruciating pain came in waves, each more intense than the last. His willpower started to waver. He had indeed endured a lot of pain before this. However, it had all been on a physical level. He had never endured pain like this, where he was devoid of a physical body and the pain was acting straight on his divine sense. Even with willpower as powerful as his, he still felt an urge to end this pain through death. His willpower grew weaker and weaker, and the fire in his soul flickered as if it were about to go out. If he gave up now, he would never be able to crawl up again. No. What had he cultivated so hard for? It definitely wasn't to die here. He had family, friends, lovers, and a son he still hadn't seen yet. Moreover, he still hadn't suppressed the savage woman, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. The 5 sects hadn't been obliterated, either, and he still had yet to find the mysterious assassin who had attacked him on his journey from the Joint Peace Planet to the Flying Cloud Planet. There were far too many people waiting for him, and there were far too many things that he still wanted to do, so how could he die here? A spark appeared in his mind as he strengthened his resolve to live. He channeled the indestructible heaven's scroll in his divine sense. This cultivation technique tempered both the physical body and divine sense, and thus it could still be channeled even though only his divine sense remained. Ling Han channeled the indestructible heaven's scroll, again and again. His divine sense finally escaped from the brink of destruction. However, this only protected the vitality of his divine sense, and prevented it from being incinerated. It didn't free him from the pain of being burned by the immortal flames. In reality, the longer he resisted, the longer he would be burned. The pain that he felt wouldn't decrease by an iota. Rising from the ashes. Small Tower's words flashed through Ling Han's mind. Resisting the immortal flames wasn't his aim. With his current abilities, it would be impossible for him to resist the immortal flames. The only reason he was alive was because he was in the Black Tower. His task was to comprehend the profound mystery of rising from the ashes. Meanwhile, his reference for this comprehension would be the Indestructible Heaven's Scroller section of the Indestructible Heaven's Scroll had come from the secret technique of the Immortal Phoenix. Thus, Ling Han would grasp the mystical power of rising from the ashes once he managed to truly comprehend this section of the Indestructible Heaven's Scroll. Consequently, he would genuinely possess the power of indestructibility. Ling Han continued to analyze this section of the Indestructible Heaven's Scroll as he endured the burning pain of the immortal flames. He hadn't noticed anything special about this section before, but now that he was being burned by the immortal flames, he suddenly developed a completely new understanding of it. So this is how it is. So that's what this meant. Oh, I never considered this before. He continued to exclaim in his mind. Although the immortal flames caused him great agony, they also allowed him to experience the feeling of death and rebirth. Of course, just experiencing this feeling wasn't enough. He also had to understand and comprehend it. Only by doing so would he be able to truly grasp this secret technique. Numerous golden symbols floated through his divine sense, distorting and shifting as they did. In the end, they transformed into numerous true phoenixes, all of which craned their necks and soared into the sky, boundless flames burning on their bodies. No, these weren't true phoenixes. They were immortal phoenixes. Ling Han was suddenly struck by enlightenment. Immortal dragons were probably of the water element, while immortal phoenixes were probably of the fire element. They each represented an extreme. Although the black dragon race that Ao Ziyun belonged to played with fire, they were a complete mongrel of a race. They couldn't compare to immortal phoenixes at all. Fire, 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 fire. Could it be that these immortal flames were actually left by an immortal phoenix? If this weren't the case, how could he still be alive? These flames were definitely related to the indestructible Heaven's Scroll, which in turn was partially related to immortal phoenixes. Otherwise, how could he comprehend the unique secret technique of the immortal phoenix rising from the ashes through being burned by the immortal flames? The indestructible Heaven's Scroll had clearly referenced a portion of the immortal phoenix's secret technique. Ling Han's mind gradually became calmer as this realization flashed in his mind. He was confident in his comprehension abilities. Moreover, this was the Black Tower, so he definitely could comprehend this secret technique. Time slowly crept by. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. After 11 days, a spot of light suddenly rose from the cauldron. Small Tower instantly became excited, its body flickering between light and dark. It didn't have a physical body to begin with, and it was simply a holographic image of a tower. Small Tower immediately launched into action. Wang. The lid of the cauldron closed, instantly making the soaring flames disappear. The spot of light bounced around for a while before suddenly falling to the ground. Surprisingly, it was a glowing fetus. Inside the fetus was a small human. Comment. This was an infant. This was Ling Han. Success. Ling Han had finally comprehended the secret technique rising from the ashes. However, it seemed like something was off as rebirth from this secret technique should have returned him to his original state. However, he had become an infant. Ha 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 ha. Small Tower couldn't help but burst into laughter. Chapter 1256, Partial Success. Chapter 1256, Partial Success. Rising from the ashes was the ultimate secret technique of the immortal phoenix tribe. Only those who possessed the purest of immortal phoenix blood would be able to unleash this secret technique, defying heaven and achieving rebirth in the process. Ling Han obviously didn't possess pure immortal phoenix blood. However, the Black Tower provided him with all kinds of unique abilities. Thus, he succeeded in rising from the ashes after comprehending the profound mystery of the corresponding section in the indestructible Heaven's Scroll. Crucially, however, he still hadn't grasped the entirety of the secret technique. As a result, his rebirth had only returned him to an infant state. Fuck. Why is it like this? Ling Han grimaced as he looked at his miniature arms and legs. His power and cultivation still remained the same as before, yet his body had shrunk to the size of an infant. No, he had genuinely become an infant. How could he accept this? Could he still use his willy? Fortunately, both Helian Zun Shui and Shui Yenyu had been taken to the celestial realm. Otherwise, how could they not cry to death if they saw his current state? Ling Han grimaced, and asked, Small Tower, how can I return to normal? That's easy. Just wait 17 or 18 years. After aging for that long, you'll have naturally returned to your normal appearance, Small Tower answered in mock seriousness. However, even an idiot could detect the hint of teasing in its voice. Fuck, even the proud tower couldn't resist laughing at him. It was evident just how terrible Ling Han's situation was. Although there was a wide variety of clothes in the Black Tower, none of them were suitable for an infant Ling Han. In the end, he could only tear off a few pieces of cloth to wrap himself up. Are there any other methods? Ling Han asked. Yes. Small Tower finally became serious this time, saying, you've become an infant because you still haven't achieved a thorough comprehension of rising from the ashes. In other words, You'll naturally return to normal once you fully comprehend the corresponding section of the indestructible Heaven's Scroll. Ling Han was both delighted and worried, and he said, "Fine, then open the cauldron. I'll jump back in for a while." "Impossible." Small Tower shook its head, and said, "With the current state of the Black Tower, it can only squeeze a tiny amount of immortal flames for you to use every 3 months. The amount of time you used just now already surpassed my expectations. In fact, you've delayed my repairs by 300,000 years. Ling Han's expression became dark, and he said, "So you're saying that I have to stay like this for 3 months? 3 months is my most optimistic estimation," Small Tower replied. "After all, you might not succeed in fully comprehending that section next time. I'm not belittling you, but with your comprehension abilities, it'll take you at least several hundred times to fully comprehend it. So, I suggest you patiently wait for 17 or 18 years. By then, you'll have naturally become a young man again." The proud tower couldn't help but laugh as it said this. Fuck. My reputation. If he hadn't found the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, Ling Han wouldn't have minded cultivating in seclusion for 17 or 18 years. This was the immortal realm, after all, and everyone's lifespan was incredibly long. Cultivating for 17 or 18 years wouldn't really affect anything. However, he had found the heavenly phoenix divine maiden now, so she would definitely become anxious if he didn't appear for so many years. In fact, she might even think that he had died in the two-realm battlefield. What would he do if she became neglectful of herself? Ling Han channeled his origin power. Pa, pa, pa. His body immediately began to grow larger. At his cultivation level, changing the shape of his body was a simple task. It wasn't long before he returned to his normal appearance. However, this appearance was only a facade. If he came across someone much stronger than him, they would see through him with a single glance. Unfortunately, the cultivation level of the heavenly phoenix divine maiden was far above his. "I'll eat pills and eat more pills. I have to reach the consummate level as quickly as possible," Ling Han shouted. He retrieved a berserk blood spirit pill and tossed it into his mouth. He then ran over to the reincarnation tree, where he would comprehend the regulations as he absorbed the effects of the pill. His body was completely new at this moment, so it naturally didn't have any traces of alchemic poisoning. As a result, he could ingest berserk blood spirit pills again. While he was at it, he also tossed a berserk blood spirit pill to Rabbit. He had reached the Sun-Moon tier, and this was also inside the Black Tower. Thus, Ling Han could easily suppress any side effects that the pill had on Rabbit. At the very least, he could prevent Rabbit from exploding to death. The old ginseng was extremely envious. He hadn't reached the Sun-Moon tier yet, so he would definitely die if he dared to ingest the berserk blood spirit pill. However, it wouldn't be too long before he reached the Sun-Moon tier. He had buried his roots in the Black Tower, and there was also the reincarnation tree to speed up his comprehension. The speed of his cultivation couldn't be any quicker. Pu. Notionless Saint, who was wrapped around a branch of the reincarnation tree, couldn't help but burst into laughter when he saw Ling Han's appearance. Rabbit and the old ginseng couldn't see through Ling Han's disguise, but how could a saint not see through it? "Big brother, what are you laughing about?" Rabbit asked shamelessly. After learning that this orb of light was a saint, he had started to refer to him as Big Brother. If he were looked after by a saint in the future, he would be able to do as he pleased in the immortal realm. "Don't say," Ling Han said in irritation. After learning about the celestial realm, his respect and fear for saints had fallen drastically. If Notionless Saint had a body, he would definitely be bending over in laughter. In fact, he had almost fallen from the reincarnation tree just then. However, he was living in Ling Han's spatial god tool, so he had no option but to listen to him. He naturally wouldn't reveal Ling Han's secret. This made both Rabbit and the old ginseng itchy with curiosity. "Calm down and cultivate earnestly," Ling Han shouted. He then sat down and started to digest the berserk blood spirit pill. After absorbing the effects of the pill, he instantly noticed a difference from the last time. He had almost exploded the first time that he ingested a berserk blood spirit pill. This time, however, he was able to tolerate its effects much better, even though he hadn't advanced a minor level. Sure enough, his physique had grown stronger after he rose from the ashes. If he had taken a path of hardness before, then he was taking a path of toughness now. When enduring damage, he wouldn't brute force through it as he had before. Instead, he would absorb it like the ocean. Water possessed unlimited endurance. Fire did too. Ah! Next to him, Rabbit wailed in agony. He had also ingested a berserk blood spirit pill. However, even though Small Tower had used the power of the Black Tower to suppress the pill's side effects, this was only enough to prevent Rabbit from dying. Flesh that should explode would still explode, pain that should be tolerated would still need to be tolerated. Meanwhile, Ling Han didn't make a peep. First of all, he had already ingested a berserk blood spirit pill before. Second of all, his physique had been elevated to a new height. As such, the pain caused by the berserk blood spirit pill was already within tolerable limits. His power soared explosively, and thanks to the effects of the reincarnation tree, his comprehension of regulations was also able to keep up with the rise of his cultivation level. 3 days later, Ling Han suddenly opened his eyes. Low extreme of the late stage. Very well. Apart from the fact that he was an infant, everything else was going smoothly. Sigh. Ling Han couldn't help but sigh. Now that no one was around, he naturally reverted back to his original appearance. However, he couldn't get used to his short arms and legs. Moreover, it looks like that function has devolved as well. Ling Han grimaced as he looked down at his little buddy. If that savage woman wants to ride me, doesn't this mean that I won't even have the ability to be ridden? Ling Han sighed again. He decided to go out for a stroll. After all, there were still 3 months before he could enter the cauldron of immortal flames for a second time. Fuck. What kind of luck is this? He exclaimed. He discovered a palm-sized crystal before him the moment that he exited the Black Tower. This was a realm spirit stone. Chapter 1257, Fighting over the Realm Spirit Stone. Chapter 1257, Fighting over the Realm Spirit Stone. Ling Han had heard Rabbit provide a detailed description of realm spirit stones before. Thus, he was able to determine that the stone before him was a realm spirit stone with a single glance. Moreover, it was actually the size of a palm. This was truly astonishing. Generally speaking, finding a realm spirit stone that was the size of a pinky was already very fortunate. Finding one that was the size of an egg would be extremely fortunate. Now, however, Ling Han had found one that was the size of a palm. Even heavenly body tier elites would be tempted if they saw this. If I were you, I definitely wouldn't pick that up. Instead, I would immediately turn around and leave, a voice suddenly said. This voice was cold and eerie, and it possessed an overwhelming killing intent. After leaving the Black Tower, Ling Han had naturally transformed his body to a normal size. He looked toward the source of the sound, only to see a youth standing not too far away from him. His eyes were fixed on the realm spirit stone at his feet. This person didn't give him an odd feeling, so he was definitely from the immortal realm. Ling Han couldn't help but smile, and he asked, "Why?" "Because I have my eyes on it." "You'll only end up dying if you fight me for it," the youth said coldly. "Oh, so you're trying to steal my things?" Ling Han asked. The youth sneered in scorn, and said, "This realm spirit stone doesn't have an owner yet. It's not in your hands, so how am I stealing your things? Natural treasures are obtained through power." Ling Han bent down and picked the realm spirit stone up. He then smiled, and said, "It's in my hands now." "What now?" The corners of the youth's mouth twitched in anger. "You're doing this on purpose, aren't you? Tell me your name." "My 1,000 hallucination saber doesn't kill the nameless." This person was fairly interesting. Ling Han smiled, and said, "My surname is Ni, and my name is Ba. Niba, the youth muttered. He couldn't recall any powerful youth going by this name. However, he suddenly came to a realization after muttering the name a few more times. Didn't Niba mean your dad? This B** starred. He actually dares to humiliate me. Very well, you even dare to trick me, Yang Jun. Killing intent surged from the youth's body. He couldn't contain his urge to kill any longer. Ling Han put the realm spirit stone away before saying, "I was just kidding. Young people need to be tolerant and magnanimous." Why the serious expression? Sure. There was a flash, and Yang Jun had already swung his saber at Ling Han. His saber skills were extraordinary, and even the air was torn apart by his slash. A vacuum fissure appeared between him and Ling Han. Ling Han activated the star plucking step, evading this attack at an incredible speed. He couldn't help but sigh in emotion. The secret techniques of the immortal phoenix weren't limited to just rising from the ashes. Their speed was also tremendous. In fact, the speed of immortal phoenixes and rocks could be regarded as the quickest in the world. It would be amazing if he could comprehend and achieve such a speed as well. However, it was a pity that the main focus of the indestructible Heaven Scroll was on indestructibility. This cultivation technique primarily focused on tempering one's physique and divine sense. The indestructible Heaven Scroll wasn't outstanding in terms of movement technique and power. Meanwhile, Yang Jun was astonished by Ling Han's speed. He humphed and said, "No wonder you dare to compete against me. So it turns out that you do have some skills. Seeing as this is the two-realm battlefield, I don't want to kill you," Ling Han said calmly. "I'll spare your life so you can battle against the netherworld beings. However, if you insist on provoking me, I'll have no option but to send you into the afterlife." Yang Jun laughed in fury, and said, "You merely evaded a single strike of mine, yet you actually dare to make such a bold claim? Heh, what an absolute joke." Ling Han also laughed, and he said, "If a tiger doesn't roar, you'll think I'm an ill cat, huh?" Bursts of divine light surged from Yang Jun's body and streaked into his saber. Peng, peng, peng. The saber started to pulsate with the sound of a heartbeat, and it was as if it had developed a life of its own. Ling Han knew that his opponent was charging up for a big attack. However, he didn't seize this opportunity to attack and disrupt his opponent. Instead, he allowed Yang Jun to charge his attack all he wanted. Yang Jun was only at the peak stage of the low extreme, which was one sub-minor level above Ling Han. If Ling Han wasn't confident in defeating such an opponent, he would be far too trashy. "Arrogant. You're truly arrogant," Yang Jun shouted. After absorbing countless bursts of divine light, a black mist started to rise from the saber in his hand. The sight of this was extremely strange. His opponent clearly knew that he was charging up for a big attack, yet he still didn't seize the opportunity to attack him or disrupt him. He was far too arrogant. He lunged at Ling Han, and roared, "You're going to pay a bloody price for underestimating me, Wang." His saber swung forward, and it surprisingly released a ferocious black beast. It was unclear what this beast was. It looked a bit like a tiger, yet it had the tail of a fish. The ferocious beast widened its maws and bit at Ling Han. The inside of its mouth was pitch black, and it was as if it could swallow everything in the world. Ling Han didn't retreat. Instead, he clenched his hand into a fist and delivered a punch at the ferocious beast. Countless divine patterns intertwined, eventually forming a boundless streak of light. Peng! The ferocious beast was instantly sent flying. It transformed back into a streak of saber light that gradually shattered into pieces in the air. Yang Jun was stunned. This was his most powerful strike, and the 1,000 hallucination saber in his hand had magnified the might of his attack manyfold. However, his opponent had shattered his attack with a casual, ordinary punch. His opponent was far too powerful. He immediately released a long howl. Sound waves surged into the surroundings, and under the influence of his origin power, they raced in all directions at a speed much quicker than normal. It wasn't long before howls of reply traveled over from the distance. Moreover, it wasn't just one howl. Rather, there was a wave of howls. Ling Han smiled, and said, "What's this? You can't defeat me, so you're calling for reinforcements?" Yang Jun couldn't help but flush in embarrassment. He was a proud person, and he had always believed that he was at least second if not first among those of his age group. However, he had come across a powerful enemy that he couldn't defeat right after entering the two-realm battlefield. Not only that, but his opponent was even one sub-minor level below him. If this were a fight over nothing, his pride would definitely have him turn around and leave. However, their fight involved the ownership of a palm-sized realm spirit stone. Just how valuable was it? Thus, he cast aside his shame and called for reinforcements. After a short while, 5 people arrived from different directions at almost exactly the same time. Their cultivation levels ranged from the low extreme to the high extreme. 4 of them were male, while only 1 of them was female. "What's wrong, junior brother Yang?" the 5 people asked. The howl that Yang Jun had unleashed just then was an emergency signal of the Blazing Inferno sect. Yang Jun pointed at Ling Han and said, "There's a realm spirit stone on him, and it's as large as a palm." The 5 people were astonished and delighted upon hearing this. One of the more senior men cupped his hands in salute and said, "This brother over here, can you please give the realm spirit stone to us? The Blazing Inferno sect will definitely compensate you well." Ling Han smiled and said, "You want me to give you the realm spirit stone in exchange for an empty promise?" The 6 people exchanged a glance, a hint of delight on their faces. Judging by Ling Han's attitude, it seemed as if there was room for discussion. "Brother, name a price," the man said. Ling Han pondered for a moment before saying, "Easy, I'll exchange it for true origin stones or godly metal." To him, realm spirit stones were merely a form of wealth. Thus, he naturally didn't mind selling it to others. No problem, the man said hurriedly. He then hesitated briefly before asking, "Brother, can I please see the size of the realm spirit stone for myself?" Chapter 1258 followed in secret. Chapter 1258 followed in secret. Ling Han wasn't afraid of them playing tricks on him. He took the realm spirit stone out briefly and asked, "Satisfied?" "Yes, of course," the man said as he nodded hurriedly. "How many true origin stones does brother want for this? How many can you guys offer?" Ling Han asked with a smile. Yang Jun and the 5 others whispered among themselves. After a while, they said, "There's only a limited number of true origin stones on us. Why don't you follow us to the Blazing Inferno sect? Our seniors will naturally pay you the necessary amount." Ling Han shook his head with a smile and said, "That won't work. How do I know you guys aren't leading me into a trap? Perhaps you'll ambush and kill me somewhere, no?" It was necessary to keep one's guard up against strangers. Even though he had the Black Tower, this was no reason for him to take unnecessary risks. "How about this? I'll give you guys 3 months' time. After 3 months, I'll wait for you in the Wolf Fang City's old Zhong's Inn. If you guys bring enough true origin stones or godly metal, I'll sell the realm spirit stone to you. Otherwise, I'll put it up for auction." A malicious glint instantly appeared in one of the youth's eyes, and he said, "Seventh senior brother, why don't we just capture him and snatch the realm spirit stone?" "Millimeter." 2 others nodded in agreement. The man pondered for a moment before shaking his head and saying, "How can our Blazing Inferno sect do such things? Don't mention it again." He then turned to Ling Han and said, "Brother, then this is a deal. We'll meet in Old Zhong's Inn in 3 months. He led the 5 others out. After walking far away, someone couldn't help but ask, "Seventh senior brother, why didn't we use force? Founder Marrow is only a tiny bit away from reaching the heavenly body tier. If we bring that realm spirit stone back, Founder Marrow will definitely succeed in breaking through. Meanwhile, we'll all become heroes of the sect." "Humph." The man shook his head and said, "That brat isn't easy to deal with. Otherwise, why would junior brother Yang have called us over?" A look of embarrassment appeared on Yang Jun's face, and he said, "I'm far weaker than that person." The others all cried out in astonishment. Although Yang Jun's cultivation level wasn't high, his battle prowess was relatively extraordinary, was a 4-star genius. In other words, only those at the high extreme could suppress him. Since he admitted to being far weaker than Ling Han, this signified that Ling Han's battle prowess was at least at the early stage of the high extreme. In fact, it could even be at the middle stage or late stage. "If we ganged up on and attacked him, everything would be fine if we succeeded," the man said. "However, if we failed, that realm spirit stone would have nothing else to do with us. We wouldn't even be able to buy it from him. Junior brother Liu, junior brother Ma, you two immediately report this matter to Uncle Chen. He's an elder at the consummate level of the sun-moon tier, so he'll definitely be able to suppress that brat. In the meantime, the rest of us will follow him in secret. When Uncle Chen arrives, we'll force that brat to hand the realm spirit stone over. If he cooperates obediently, Humph, we'll spare his life. Otherwise, we'll send him to the afterlife. The hearts of the 5 other people shivered. This 7th senior brother looked gentle and easygoing, yet his disposition was cautious and sinister. He was like a poisonous snake, and those who offended him would die without even knowing how they had died. They hurriedly acted according to the plan. 2 of them left to call for reinforcements, while the remaining 4 followed Ling Han in secret. As they followed him, they left marks that were unique to the Blazing Inferno sect. These would act as road signs for their reinforcements. However, how sensitive was Ling Han's divine sense? It wasn't long before he realized that he was being tailed. As expected. One may know a person and their appearance, but will never know their heart, he said with a sigh. In the beginning, he'd had a fairly good impression of the man. It was because of this that he had agreed to potentially sell the realm spirit stone to them. But now, only 4 of them were following him at this moment. It was clear that the other 2 had gone to call for reinforcements. They wanted to deal him a fatal blow. Ling Han wasn't afraid. Ignoring the fact that this was the 2-realm battlefield where regulations behaved strangely, and decreased the battle prowess of elites as a result, could still hide in the Black Tower. Thus, it wouldn't matter even if their battle prowess wasn't affected. Moreover, Ling Han didn't want to hide if their reinforcement wasn't a heavenly body tier elite. Instead, he wanted to fight. In this peculiar place, he could even battle against those at the consummate level of the sun-moon tier. Ling Han continued to look for realm spirit stones. In any case, he needed to wait 3 months before the Black Tower accumulated enough immortal flames again. Thus, there wasn't much for him to do. He spent some time looking for realm spirit stones, and also spent some time refining pills in the Black Tower. This proved extremely troublesome for Yang Jun and the others. They would suddenly lose sight of Ling Han for days on end, and they would think that he had secretly fled after seeing through their scheme. However, he would mysteriously reappear after a few days. This left them all very baffled. What on earth are you playing at? Have you seen through our scheme or not? Fortunately, Ling Han didn't disappear too many times. He would stroll through the realm most of the time, and he would occasionally come across netherworld beings. During such encounters, he would either battle or flee, depending on the strength of his opponent. However, Ling Han purposefully acted weaker than he was, fleeing when he came across netherworld elites at the consummate level of the sun-moon tier. Otherwise, their reinforcements definitely wouldn't dare to attack him if they were only in the sun-moon tier. Right now, he was giving them a chance. If they stopped now, he wouldn't pursue the matter. However, if they insisted on targeting him, he wouldn't show them any mercy, either. 11 days passed, and in a stroke of huge fortune, Ling Han finally found another realm spirit stone. However, this realm spirit stone was far smaller than the one that he had found before. It was only the size of a pinky. As small as it may be, it's still a realm spirit stone. Ling Han chuckled as he put the realm spirit stone away. He cocked his head and said, "Have their reinforcements finally arrived?" The 4 people that were tailing him had suddenly grown to 7. He couldn't help but sigh. He wasn't a bloodthirsty person, yet there were always those who forced him to become a ruthless killer. Shoo, 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 shoo. 7 figures dashed over and surrounded Ling Han. They were none other than Yang Jun and the others. An awkward smile appeared on Ling Han's face, and he asked, "Guys, what's the meaning of this? Didn't we agree to meet in Wolf Fang City?" The faces of Yang Jun and the 5 others flushed. It was embarrassing to be called out like this. However, the expression of the only elder present remained cold, and he said, "Young man, watch your tongue. Immediately hand the realm spirit stone over. Otherwise, you'll simply be asking for death." A pensive expression appeared on Ling Han's face, and he retrieved both of the realm spirit stones, asking, "Which one are you talking about? This one? Or this one?" He raised the realm spirit stone in his left hand, and then raised the realm spirit stone in his right hand. The elder's expression instantly became greedy, and he exclaimed, "Both of them." "No problem," Ling Han said with a nod. 300 million true origin stones. The elder was infuriated, and he roared, "Brat, do you think I'm kidding around with you? If you dare to waste any more time, I'll cut you into pieces." "Oh no. I'm so scared," Ling Han exclaimed as he purposefully shrunk back in fright. He then chuckled, and said, "Fine, who's coming to collect them?" He gazed at each of them before pushing his hands outward, and saying, "Come on, come and take them. Don't be shy." Chapter 1259 Vicious Nature Revealed. Chapter 1259 Vicious Nature Revealed. Yang Jun and the 5 others exchanged a hesitant glance. The behavior of this person was far too strange. Even if he were truly backing down, shouldn't he have thrown the realm spirit stones onto the ground and frantically run away? Is he messing with us right now? But there's an elite at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier before him. Does he still dare to mess around? One of the youths walked over, and said, "Fine, hand them to me." There was a hint of ambition in his eyes. If he could personally bring these 2 realm spirit stones back, his standing in the sect would definitely rise significantly. The key was that Founder Marrow was only 1 step away from advancing to the heavenly body tier. If he could contribute to his advance, he would definitely be viewed in a new light by Founder Mao. If he were held in high regard by a heavenly body tier elite, just how incredible would that be? After taking a step, he immediately took a second, and then a third. He arrived before Ling Han and grabbed at the 2 realm spirit stones. Sigh. Ling Han sighed as he slightly curled a finger. Shio. A burst of sword chi instantly swept outward. "Impudent," the youth roared. He knew that Ling Han was very powerful, so much so that he could even suppress Yang Jun. However, his cultivation level had already reached the peak stage of the medium extreme, and he was more so a 1-star genius. In other words, he was slightly stronger than Yang Jun. Thus, Ling Han wouldn't necessarily be able to defeat him even if he could defeat Yang Jun anyhow. Even if Ling Han could defeat him, he would still have the ability to protect himself. It was because of thinking like this that he dared to step forward. Otherwise, what would he do if Ling Han was a stubborn fool who wanted to drag others down with him? However, he was still surprised that Ling Han actually dared to attack him. Although he was already mentally prepared for this, he still couldn't help but feel furious upon seeing the burst of sword light sweeping toward him. He raised a hand to block the sword light. "There's a consummate level elite standing behind me right now, so you're merely seeking death by attacking me. Just wait to be suppressed." However, the consummate level elder was shocked upon seeing Ling Han's attack. He hurriedly reached over, and shouted, "Stop." It was already too late. A burst of sword light slashed over. Pu. Blood sprayed through the air, and 4 of the youth's fingers were instantly sliced off. They flew into the surroundings like flowers scattered by a divine maiden. "Ah!" The youth instantly started to wail in agony. Ling Han activated the star plucking step and evaded the elder's counterattack at an incredible speed. He smiled, and said, "Ah, your fingers have been severed. How are you going to collect the realm spirit stones now?" "Brat, you're really asking for death," the elder said, a dark expression on his face. This brat was surrounded, yet he still dared to resist stubbornly. He was seeking death. Ling Han laughed, and said, "It's still too early to say who's going to live, and who's going to die." "Young man, you're far too arrogant," the elder said with a humph. Streaks of divine patterns appeared as he grabbed at Ling Han, and his hand transformed into a 5-finger mountain that descended from the sky. This elder's name was Chen Sen, and he was a higher-up of the Blazing Inferno sect. Right now, Founder Marrow genuinely had a chance to reach the heavenly body tier. This naturally became the most important matter in the sect, and thus everyone ventured out to search for realm spirit stones. Being on the doorstep of the heavenly body tier and actually advancing to the heavenly body tier were 2 completely different matters. The Blazing Inferno sect was only a small Sun-Moon tier force, so the appearance of a heavenly body tier elite would definitely elevate the status of their sect. In order to achieve this, the Blazing Inferno sect was truly going all out to obtain realm spirit stones. Ling Han glared at the elder, and a burst of heaven's might instantly surged from his body. Wang. The formidable might surged into the surroundings. What's going on? Why did my power suddenly fall significantly? Heavens! Yang Jun and the others all cried out in astonishment. Even the descending hand of Chen Sen veered slightly off its path. However, this hand was far too large, so it didn't matter even if it veered off. It was still bearing down on Ling Han. Ling Han formed a fist and launched a punch at the five-finger mountain in the sky. The power of his fist gathered and condensed into a dot. Pu. The five-finger mountain crashed down, yet a streak of divine light soared into the sky. A hole had been blasted in the large hand. Through this hole, the dazzling light of a fist could be seen. Chen Sen gave a muffled groan. Although the five-finger mountain had been formed from his origin power, his hand had still suffered a slight backlash when the five-finger mountain had been penetrated. A searing pain burned through his palm, leaving an angry red mark. He was slightly stunned. The power of this young man was incredible. It was actually able to penetrate his defenses and injure his actual body. Of course, this was partly because he had underestimated Ling Han as well. The area covered by his attack had been far too large, meaning his power was dispersed over a very large area. Even if he were hundreds or thousands of times more powerful than Ling Han, attacking in such a way would still yield very poor results. On the other hand, if he had concentrated his power in a single point as Ling Han had, the effects of heaven's might would have caused him to completely miss his target. "Young man, you're fairly impressive, he said in a menacing voice. Although he was praising Ling Han, the killing intent in his voice couldn't be hidden. Ling Han smiled modestly, and said, "My power is only SOSO. There's no need for you to praise me like this, old sir. You'll only make me arrogant, which is a big no-no for young people." Chen Sen's expression finally changed. Ling Han's calm demeanor caused fury to well up in his mind. "You're seeking death." He widened his left eye, which surprisingly transformed into a cave of blazing flames. He then reached a hand inside and retrieved a divine sword that was bathed in scorching flames. Nurturing a god tool with one's own body would elevate the might of the god tool to an extreme. However, doing this also came with a significant drawback. While growing, the god tool would absorb its host's blood essence, thereby affecting the host's own advancement. However, to people like Chen Sen, who was already at the peak stage of the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier and had no more room for advancement, consuming a bit of blood essence was no big deal. The consumed blood essence could be replenished after cultivating for a short while. Chen Sen had obtained this divine sword 100 or so years ago. It was then that he had saved up enough to purchase a block of level 8 godly metal. He had gotten someone to forge it into a sword for him, and then he had placed it inside his body to nurture. Although it had only been a century or so, his divine sword had already reached the stage of great accomplishment. With this divine sword in hand, he was confident that he could defeat most consummate level elites. A suitable god tool would aid a cultivator immensely. Scorching flames burn the heart. Chen Sen slashed his sword, and a ball of scorching flames transformed into a streak of light that pierced at Ling Han's chest. Because of its devastating temperature, the streak of light caused ripples of distortion to appear in the air surrounding it. Then, these pockets of air all burst into flames. This was utterly terrifying. To say nothing of touching these flames, just being consumed by the devastating heat waves that they emitted would be enough to wound elites at the early stage of the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier. The others all retreated, afraid that they would be licked by the flames. If that were to happen, they would die before even knowing what had hit them. However, Ling Han couldn't help but laugh. Perhaps he would have been slightly afraid if Chen Sen had used poisonous liquid or formidable weapons to attack him. After all, Chen Sen was an elite at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier. However, he had unleashed a flame element attack. One had to remember that Ling Han had been burned by immortal flames before. It was also in the immortal flames that he had comprehended the secret technique, rising from the ashes. If one wanted to defeat him with fire, their cultivation level needed to be at least one major tier above his. Chapter 1260, Tables Turned. Chapter 1260 Tables Turned. Xiu. The streak of light shot toward Ling Han at an incredible speed. After all, this was the attack of an elite at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier. Under normal circumstances, it would be impossible for Ling Han to withstand such an attack. In fact, even with his powerful physique, his godly bones would still be shattered. Although Qian Sen's attack wouldn't be powerful enough to burn him to ashes, it would definitely be powerful enough to blast a hole in his body. Large swathes of his skin would also be scorched. However, he was someone who had endured the test of immortal flames. Although he had received help from the Black Tower, that was still incredibly impressive. Thus, it would be impossible to harm him with divine flames, unless his opponent was one major tier above him. That was right, they had to suppress him in terms of major tier. That being the case, Ling Han was too lazy to even dodge. He simply raised his right hand and made a pressing motion toward the streak of light. At the same time, he unleashed the sword intent of the fast technique, causing the speed of his hand to increase tremendously. Pu. The light hit his hand, and the overwhelming power of the collision caused him to immediately slide back. This was the formidable power of a consummate level elite. However, an astonishing radiance burst from his hand, causing Qian Sen's attack to curve around him. It was unable to scorch his hand. Peng. Ling Han continued to slide back at a frightening speed. In fact, his speed was as fast as his full-power sprint. Coincidentally, a disciple of the Blazing Inferno sect was standing right behind him. This disciple had no time to react before he was hit by Ling Han's body. Just how powerful was this collision? It was as powerful as the full-power attack of an elite at the consummate level with a level 6 god tool in their hand. Meanwhile, that disciple was only at the late stage of the low extreme. So, how could they withstand such a collision? Blood and flesh exploded into the surroundings as that disciple was ruthlessly crushed into pieces. He transformed into a vast rain of blood, crushed bones, and broken flesh. He couldn't be any more dead. However, this collision also helped Ling Han come to a stop. He flapped his hand and extinguished the flames that were burning on it. He then raised his hand to check for any damage. His palm had already become jet black, and it was clear that his skin had still received some minor burns. Sure enough, the large gap between their cultivation levels meant that he was still at a slight disadvantage. Ling Han glanced back with a smile and said, "I'm so sorry, I don't have eyes on the back of my head, so I accidentally smashed you to death. However, if you want to blame someone, blame the person who attacked me. After all, I'm also a victim." The 6 remaining members of the Blazing Inferno sect were all stunned. They were rendered absolutely speechless. Is this person a monster? He received the strike of an elite at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier, yet his body actually wasn't smashed into pieces? And his blood and bones weren't incinerated, either? He simply dispersed the power of the strike by sliding backward? Perhaps one might suspect that Qian Sen hadn't used his full power. However, was this possible? Ling Han had collided into their 7th junior brother and smashed him into smithereens. Was this power not tremendous? Even if Ling Han's physique were incredibly tough, allowing him to absorb such tremendous power, how did he survive the might of the scorching flames? That was the might of divine flames, and it had been unleashed by the level 8 god tool of a consummate level elite. Such flames could definitely incinerate elites at the high extreme of the Sun-Moon tier, yet Ling Han had merely received minor burns on his hand. How can such a freak exist? Ling Han channeled the indestructible Heaven's Scroll, immediately shedding the layer of burnt skin from his hand. A new layer of jade-like skin grew in its place. He had only shed this layer of burnt skin because of Qian Sen's remnant martial intent. Otherwise, his body would regenerate by itself even if he didn't channel the indestructible Heaven's Scroll. He cracked a grin and said, "I gave you people a chance to do business normally, yet you insisted on becoming thieves. Now, it's time for you to suffer the consequences, Xiu." He clenched his fists and dashed toward the disciples of the Blazing Inferno sect. "Stop!" Qian Sen roared. He hurriedly rushed forward to meet Ling Han's attacks. This brat was far too freakish, and his battle prowess couldn't be measured based on his cultivation level. If he were given a free rein to attack, everyone apart from him would be massacred. To the blazing Inferno sect, each and every Sun-Moon tier disciple was incredibly precious. The 6 Disciplesno, there were only 5 now, had all been trained by the sect for over 100,000 years. They were immensely talented, and if they came across the right opportunities, it was entirely possible that they could advance to the heavenly body tier in the future. Of course, it was essential that a flourishing sect had several elites to act as pillars. However, the true core of a sect was their disciples. Otherwise, what was the point of having a heavenly body tier elite and no disciples? Chen Sen was a consummate level elite, after all, and a mountain-like pressure descended from the sky as he opened his hands. This formidable pressure limited Ling Han's movements, giving the disciples time to escape his grasp. "This is a bit troublesome," Ling Han exclaimed with a shake of his head. It was extremely difficult to kill people under the nose of an elite at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier, unless the elite became careless. However, Chen Sen was clearly prepared now, so it would be incredibly difficult for him to kill any more people. "Brat, I admit you're fairly powerful," Chen Sen said. "However, the gulf between you and me is clear for all to see. It's impossible for you to win. Hand the realm spirit stones over, then sever your own arms. If you do as I say, I can spare your life." Uncle Chen, Yang Jun and the others exclaimed in astonishment. This brat had killed a disciple of the blazing Inferno sect. How could they let him off so lightly? However, Chen Sen knew that his full power strike with his divine sword had failed to injure Ling Han severely. His defenses were far too freakish. It was only because he had an advantage in terms of power and comprehension of regulations that he was able to suppress Ling Han. Otherwise, even he would have to turn around and flee. In any case, it would be mission success as long as he obtained the realm spirit stones. Once Founder Marrow broke through to the heavenly body tier, he would have an advantage of 1 major tier over that brat. Thus, it wouldn't matter even if that brat advanced to the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier. He still wouldn't be able to escape the fate of being insta-killed. Different situations required different solutions. Chen Sen understood what was most important. However, Ling Han shook his head and said, "You people are so haughty and domineering. You're clearly trying to rob me, yet you're making it seem like you're being benevolent to me. You want me to sever my own arms? Heh, are you fucking retarded?" He was extremely pissed off. He waved his right hand, upon which a flower appeared on the ground. This flower was breathtakingly beautiful, and it radiated with the rhythm of Tao. It was like a godly medicine that had been nurtured by heaven and earth. However, one would be screwed over if they truly believed that this was a superb godly medicine. This was the misty soul-capturing flower, a flower that Ling Han had obtained in the Yellow Spring Mystery Realm. At that time, even he had almost fallen victim to this flower. His soul had been hooked, and he had been attacked by numerous saintly scarabs. During its time in the Black Tower, this poisonous flower had grown a little bit more. Its aura was even more in tune with the Great Tao now, and its ability to deceive people had elevated to another level. An expression of intoxication spread across Yang Jun's and the 5 others' faces. It was as if they had entered some kind of illusion. Their bodies became relaxed, and the corners of their lips curled up in a smile. Ling Han immediately launched into action. Pu, 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 Pu. Apart from Chen Sen, the heads of the 5 others were all smashed into pieces. Chen Sen had been stuck at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier for far too long, and this had enabled him to temper his divine sense to an extremely resilient state. When Ling Han's fist struck over, he instinctively moved aside and evaded the fatal strike. Ling Han's punch scraped across his face, the breeze it caused ripping off large amounts of flesh and blood. The damage was so severe that even his teeth were revealed. However, this strike also brought Chen Sen to his senses. He stumbled back in shock, only stopping after retreating hundreds of meters. There was terror on his face as he stared at the misty soul-capturing flower. This peculiar godly medicine-like flower could actually affect his divine sense. In fact, he had almost died a muddle-headed death. Ling Han's fighting spirit soared, and he immediately pursued Chen Sen, saying, "Old geezer, Your juniors have all died, so why don't you stay to accompany them? You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.